Ladies and gentlemen, Florida's new lieutenant governor is named Jay Collins. He's a decorated Green Beret, having served 23 years on active duty. Was involved in a lot of campaigns. He earned a lot of military decorations, ranging from the Bronze Star to the Legion of Merit. He was also wounded in action and was awarded the Purple Heart, which obviously when you're in special forces, that is kind of the cost of doing business, and that can happen. What's somewhat unique about Jay is he ended up losing one of his legs as a result of his service. And rather than take a medical retirement, which he was entitled to, he decided to re-up and serve 5 more years as a Green Beret with a prosthetic leg. And he's continued to exude service above self in Florida as a state senator and has been one of our most productive Florida senators. He's also, prior to becoming lieutenant governor, was a leader in a hurricane relief organization that would immediately be there in the aftermath of these major hurricanes, providing food and nutrition for first responders as well as displaced residents. And he even is expeditionary when Florida's doing things overseas, like rescuing people from Israel. He's on the ground doing it and doing it very well. And so you're going to be able to learn a little bit more about him today. So welcome to the Executive Office of the Governor for the first time with you being Lieutenant Governor.
Well, thank you, Governor. I appreciate it. Pretty exciting couple days here. Thank you for, first, your trust in the opportunity to do this, and looking forward to this podcast. It'll be good to tell some stories here and fill in some of those blanks.
Well, we did your announcement at this team house in South Tampa, which is basically put together by a bunch of Green Berets, but it's not limited to that. They want it open to all veterans. Right. And so it was suggested that we do it. And I had made the comment when we got there, it's like, this ain't your grandfather's VFW. Not that those are bad. I mean, I love all that. But I mean, this was like really state of the art. I mean, some nice TV, beautiful area. But when we were doing the event there, I had a lot of veterans, and I could tell that these are folks that really appreciated what it means to serve in uniform, what it means to sacrifice, and what it means to put your country first. And I think people appreciate when they hear, like, hey, you're in harm's way, you're getting shot at, all this stuff. But there's a lot more sacrifice that goes into it before you even get forward deployed. So talk about when you're in special forces, what's it like to train to be able to get to that point where you become an Army Green Beret?
Well, becoming a Green Beret, when I went through, you didn't have a high school into the Green Berets program. Now, the X-ray program, as that's known now, lets a few people through early on just to fill the ranks out and inject a little youth, a little more physicality, some young bucks, so to speak, right? When I went through, most of the people have been in 5-6 years. You've been in the Army, you've done very well, you're in the top few percent of your MOS, your job skills, and then you go to selection, SFAS. We used to jokingly call it the School for Advanced Suffering. It's a hoot, right? I went through an ice storm class where trees were freezing, breaking, falling on people. It was great. With God's grace, I was blessed to be selected. I got to be an 18 Delta. I went through the next 2.5, almost 3 years of the Special Forces qualification course to become a Special Forces medic. But that's the easy part. You get there, you get to a team, and now you're kind of in a probationary role. You got 1 year really to prove yourself, show that you can earn it, show that you belong to the team, or you kind of get pushed aside a little bit. And the op tempo is crazy. Everyone hears about the ops, the gunfights, jumping out of planes, all the fun, exciting stuff. But what they don't hear about is the things you're alluding to. The hours and hours of training, time at the range, honing your craft, making sure your equipment is pristine, that you understand the area of operation and the area of interest that you're going into, both from a language standpoint, an endemic disease and risk factor standpoint, and then just working with your foreign counterparts as you go into some of those missions. The preparation time is incredible. And any time you deploy, you have multiple training iterations before that. So if you're going to be gone for 8 months, you can bet you're going to have probably 30 to 60 days of training prior to that. And then you had Afghanistan and Iraq, and you come back and you go to South America when I was the 7th group, with about 3 or 4 months in between. So it's a quick turn. You're doing a lot of things. It's like strapping onto a rocket ship sometimes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there were Green Berets, I think, came into being after World War II. I think sometime in the early 50s. Navy SEALs under Jack Kennedy in the early 60s. And obviously, World War II was our most our biggest modern conflict. But then now, kind of in the GWAT era and the post 9/11, I mean, so much is put on the shoulders of special forces, and it's almost like I think like politicians are like, well, we can just send special forces. That doesn't somehow count as deploying. Like, it's only boots on the ground if it's conventional forces and not special forces, which I always thought was crazy to say that, but that was kind of the way it was. So you're going, and it's constant deployments, and especially over those years in Iraq and Afghanistan, it's hard enough doing the duty, but then, you have family, you have all these other things. And there was a lot of weight that was placed on the shoulders of those folks over those years.
Governor, there sure were. And you're hitting a key point. Your family serves alongside you. It is incredibly difficult. It takes an inordinate amount of just pressure and peace and trust from your family, and a lot of grace, because there's so many times when you are told with short notice you're going to go to a country, you're not sure when you're going to be back, things are going to change, and the family just has to adapt. Your wife and your children end up doing a lot of things without you. You miss a lot of those times, and that's something we don't talk about enough, frankly. And it's one of those things where I always talk about being quiet or silent. Don't be silent. Talk about these facts. So I'm glad we can do that here. It's tough. You do what you have to do to protect and preserve our country, to take care of our community, the things we love. But what you want to do as a dad and as a husband is be there with your family. But that's the responsibility. That's why our nation is where it is, because good men did what they had to do so their children and family can do what they want to do.
When you to go to try out for special forces, do you have to be airborne qualified already, or is that after that?
Yeah, so that's depends. You can do it either way. I was already airborne qualified. I was in the 82nd Airborne Division on Fort Bragg, learning to test the theory of gravity. I was actually in jump school for 9/11.
Okay.
So
that's at Fort Benning?
It sure is. I did my first jump on September 10th. Landed, hit the ground, was pretty excited. I didn't die. Wasn't really sure I loved that. September 11th, we flew around in circles. We had no idea the towers had been hit. My wife and I had just gotten married. She was living in D.C., worked in and around the security clearance people, the CCF and DSS at the time, and was all over the Pentagon and D.C. and the military district of Washington. And back then, we didn't have cell phones. I couldn't just call her or text her. I didn't know she was okay. It took hours to figure this out. We sat on the tarmac in Georgia in September, just baking with the engines turned off before they would let us clear out.
Wow.
The whole world changed after that,
Yeah, I mean, I think Army, any military service, kind of late 90s, it was the U.S. holiday from history.
Yep.
And 9/11 really changed that, and it changed people's lives that were in the uniformed services.
Sure
for
did.
sure. It became real very quickly.
Yeah, we went from an open base where you could just drive and come and go to everything was closed. We were even out there, guarding things with like a mattock handle, like a wooden club, marching around securing the perimeter of the base. And all of the security things that we do now and we know now is normal, they came into being just in such a short time. But eventually we finished jump school. We did our last 4 jumps, graduated, and I was in the Q course a couple years later.
So what drove you to join in the first place, and talk a little bit about how you grew up and kind of
Sure.
what led you to this path?
So I was adopted by my grandparents. I was born to a kid, 16-year-old. She didn't know her head from a hole in the ground, wasn't ready to be a parent, and thank God my grandparents stepped in, my mom and dad. He was a World War II era, veteran, loved our country unconditionally, never talked about anything. He just knew where he stood because he led by example. He just did what needed to be done. Didn't ask for credit. Grew up on a farm. We ended up losing our farm coming out of the 80s. Just it was hard, The economy was in the tanks. Bad government is bad government in any state, right? And we saw that there. We just couldn't afford to live, and moved in. And eventually, I went off to college, played a couple of years of ball, wrecked my knee, wasn't really fast anymore. So I thought I'll join the Army for a few years. I always wanted to do it. My dad, my grandfather inspired me to do so, and I thought, what? Let's see how this fits. And I fell in love with it. I really did. Just the ability to be around people who were like-minded, driving you forward for excellence in each and everything you do. I just kept volunteering for thing after thing after thing. I started off as an intelligence analyst. I thought it was going to be James Bond. It was not James Bond. It was a building with no windows buried in the dirt. But quickly, that led me to Fort Bragg. And I actually got deployed forward at the beginning of the War on Terror to work with the Joint Interagency Task Force in Tampa at MacDill Air Force Base. I got to see Green Berets for the first time. Some of the guys in some of our special mission units working interagency ops for the first time. I was like, holy cow, I think I know what I want to do when I grow up. Finally, it's taken a minute. And came back from that, went to selection a couple weeks later, and been volunteering ever since.
Now, talk about your current family life. I know your wife Layla is also a 20-year military veteran. So I take it you guys met in the Army?
We did. I was actually living in the United Kingdom. I was working one of my last positions in the intel community in a combined joint intelligence center called the Joint Analysis Center in Molesworth in the United Kingdom. Not really sure how that came to be. Didn't even know we had people in England when I got assigned there, but we were at a school in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, ran off to Vegas, got married, kid you not, and are married now. We have two beautiful boys, 13 and 10. Gabe is 13, Colt's 10, and it's what we do. But what's interesting is she's a 20-year veteran. She was a counterintelligence agent, the very best of what she did. Now, we both had the opportunity to serve in special missions units. That's pretty unique. Independently, but as a family with young kids, it's kind of strange. You got a counter intel mom who's special mission unit trained, and a Green Beret dad who's special mission unit trained, and ultimately you got to feel sorry for them. Their game's got to get pretty strong. They don't get away with a lot in our household, but we're teaching them what matters. But the thing I like to tell people is, when I got hurt in Afghanistan, it was 2007 that I got shot, did surgery on myself. Got hit by a mortar later on. It was a really bad trip, I guess, and went through about 7 years of limb salvage. And then in 2014, we got to the point where my leg wasn't working. I couldn't walk, I couldn't run, I couldn't jump. I was in a brace up to my hip called the IDEO, and I was still operating. I was still operating as a Green Beret, still trying to keep my place, and the pain was just miserable, hard to function. We got my leg cut off, and rehabbed at Walter Reed. And my wife was at the tail end of her career. She sacrificed her career, raised me up, sacrificed it for our family because we couldn't have done it if she hadn't done that. She sacrificed what she was the very best at in this U.S. Army Special Operations. She was the senior Special Operations counter intel agent. That's a big deal. Very, very good at what she did. And she sacrificed that to get us up, get me on my foot, and get our kids moving forward because we had some health struggles with our little guy. We had just gone through this. We were trying to do IVF and IUI, and we were trying to figure out why our son was throwing up 10, 12, 14 times a day. And she said, enough's enough, I'm going to take care of my family. So that's something that I think has to be talked about more and more and more. But it's incredible. You hear the saying, behind every successful man is an even stronger, more dynamic woman. And, your wife, Casey, is incredible. She is just, she's a force of nature. Layla's the same way. She is the kind of person you fight wars for. And
so you guys obviously both served admirably. You've obviously have the scars to show it. You guys come back to Florida, and a few years later, you get into the political realm. So what caused you to want to run for political office?
Well, I will tell you, I had been asked many, many times, and my answer was always the same: no, I don't want to run and get into politics. I want to go run a business. I want to go do something else. I want to serve in another way. And then I realized, coming off of COVID, where again we led in this state, and coming off of Afghanistan, we were getting calls from interpreters, people we had worked with. It was heartbreaking, and to see that failure of epic proportions, us, turning our back. When the Biden administration turned their back on our allies, left people behind, it was special operators who were getting calls from people we had bled with, fought beside, and it's tough. And I realized right then and there you had a couple of options. You could sit there and complain, or you could get involved and do something. And then I got called out by my son. That's one of those magic moments when your son uses your words against you. We have a rule in my household, don't whine. I really hate whining. It's an Army thing, I guess, a military thing. Come right or don't come at all. Come with a solution, submit your solution, and let's talk through this. And he said, Dad, you're whining. What are you going to do about it? So obviously as a dad, I was like, holy cow, he listened. Awesome. But then I was pretty frustrated. I failed to live up to my own ethos, my own thought process, and my own standards. So I started calling people in Congress. Jumped in and decided to use my special skills, to quote Liam Neeson, the military gave me those, and started making a connection. And then, as luck would have it, as God's will, we got to connect, and we had the opportunity to move into this seat and run for state senate, the seat that I just vacated, and serve our community in such a dynamic way. It's something that I think we have to talk about more. As veterans, we don't want to run towards politics. We really don't. But when our politicians fail, when our academics fail, who is it that steps up and leads? It's the working class, it's the warrior class, it's people who understand what truly matters, what it is we're fighting for. They step up and lead, and it's no different.
So we had a battle earlier this year on illegal immigration. I called a special session of the legislature in the aftermath of President Trump's election victory, and we really wanted to come out guns blazing. When he took office, we were going to have the strongest immigration policy in the country to help the federal government with this really significant thing to remove illegal aliens from our country. And the Speaker of the House, when I called the session, rejected it. He said it was premature. He said it wasn't necessary. He said there was no urgency in the situation. Obviously, he got a lot of backlash from that from Republican voters, but they ended up creating this piece of legislation that really would kneecap the state's ability to help enforce immigration laws. But, when the speaker's pushing it, a lot of the members of the House and even some of the Senate, kind of was like falling in line initially. And I think you stood up from the beginning with that. There were a handful of senators who said, no, this is not good. This is a de facto amnesty bill. So walk me through kind of, that and why, us winning that fight was so important for Florida.
So it is. It was a dynamic situation, one that, frankly, we were all a little surprised to have to go through here in the state of Florida. Ultimately, we pride ourselves in getting things done. When you talk to leaders from other states, they look to us to be at the very forefront of good policy, solving problems for our country. I call us the conservative proving grounds of America. We truly are. When Florida leads, America wins. So when this happened, and you started seeing the pushback, that it's not urgent, it's not something that's important right now, let's go finish off the things we have planned, and we'll come back to it. One of the things I know as a veteran and as a service member and someone who's seen a lot of things, and I know you saw the same stuff downrange, tomorrow is not guaranteed. We cannot guarantee what tomorrow is going to bring. We can't waste that time and stand idly by and hope that things are going to be lined up appropriately. So let's take the time when we have it, act, get that language done, and then continue to move forward. So obviously I wanted to step there and get the bill done. Let's put it in place. And, we filed bills at that point, and it didn't happen. Everything got a little wonky, and we had to come back again and do this. But when you looked at the bill that came out, the Trump Act, as it was originally written, we read the bill. And when you read something and it functionally tells you we're going to catch illegal immigrants, we're going to release them on their own recognizance, just stop and think about what you're saying. You're going to catch and release. Well, that's a real problem. We're not taking Florida back 10 years. We're not going to do that. We are not going to regress and allow our state to become some sort of state sanctuary. That's not the place. This isn't how we do things. And, we had to dig in. And one of the things I know is that if you're not willing to stand alone, you're probably in the wrong spot when it comes into politics, especially in this state.
Were you surprised, though, that the House leadership did that? Because I know, you had been, here prior to that session, and, we were doing historic conservative wins across the board, and even on immigration. I mean, prior to me being governor, they allowed sanctuary cities. We banned sanctuary cities. We said no driver's licenses or ID cards for illegals, no in-state tuition. We took care of a lot of this stuff, and people realized, hey, our voters want illegal immigration dealt with. They don't want benefits. They don't want any of this. They want to deter it. And then obviously we need the federal government to come in and help remove. And that was clearly a signature issue for President Trump against the Biden-Harris. And you have this once-in-a-generation opportunity to all be on the same page, working in concert with a friendly administration in Washington. And to see that, it surprised me because Florida, as you said, had been the place people looked to for leadership, and we had produced more wins by far than any other state. But I think what it showed me is, in this town and some of these insiders, all the Florida success people talk about, they actually don't. They would rather go back to being a purple state. They do not necessarily want to be bold, and especially on illegal immigration. And so I think it was eye-opening for some of the voters, Republican voters, to see this and to say, wait a minute, you have the biggest supermajority you've ever had in the Florida House of Representatives, and you're rejecting the governor's call to be strong on illegal immigration in favor of legislation that eliminates our current operations. Because, we're stopping Haitians and stuff on boats, and that's all being done. And it actually said that was sunsetted by eliminating the state of emergency. So I think it was very eye-opening, but I think that was a really important inflection point in the state's history that we were able to get it done. And now you see what we're doing with all the great operations going on.
Well, if you look at this, just the lens of history, how often do you have a Republican president who's willing to step forward and act? First off, it hasn't really happened to have someone who's just hitting the ground moving with that kind of aggression, and have a state that is primed to sit and lead, and then just sit in their hands and just opt to take a slow roll and put in really weak language that to your point, rolls us back and gets rid of the current operations we're already doing. We were all gobsmacked, to be honest with you. The 2 years prior, and I was in the Senate for 3 years, right? So that's my track record on this. And ultimately, I was shocked. I expected that we were going to sit down, hammer through this, get this thing done, and continue to lead. You don't get moments like this. Having seen and served downrange with many presidential offices calling the shots, it was interesting to see the dynamic shifts, and to have somebody who wants to partner, who is pushing the state of Florida like, yes, we want to do this. This is what should be done. You're stepping forward and leading. To have that moment in time and then to watch it pass by to, frankly, play politics wasn't acceptable. It wasn't something we should do.
Yeah, well, I think it's a lesson for folks to know kind of what lurks under the surface here sometimes. Another issue that's getting a lot of play nationally that we dealt with years ago is the purchase of farmland by the Chinese Communist Party. I said we should not have CCP or linked entities be able to buy farmland, but also land near military bases, critical infrastructure. Right. So I called for this to be done, and you were the one that got it done. So talk a little bit about the bill to ban the CCP from buying Florida land. Yeah.
Well, something I learned in the military, and this may seem very simple and binary, but I think sometimes we overcomplicate Rice Krispies. We make really simple things complex in government. When your enemy says something, you should take them serious. You really should. China is on a new 1,000-year march, right? They want to be the economic, military, and industrial leaders across the planet. They have made that bold statement. And when they're saying that, and we know they're buying farmland all across our nation, especially farmland and land near our key infrastructure, our power, our water, our military bases, we better take that threat, that inherent threat that they're stating, completely seriously. So what I know is this: the collection abilities and the capabilities that are out there, the tools that were being utilized by the CCP when I was still active duty, that's 7.5 years ago, 8 years ago, I guess, whatever now. It's gone generations beyond that. It moves so incredibly fast. And for us not to take that moment when we had it, to secure our farmland, to secure our critical infrastructure around our power, our water, our military installations, would have been a complete and abject failure. And what's great is to see how many states have gotten in line behind us. And that's something that I think our founding fathers were very focal on, and we obviously discussed in terms of how this should be done. Should states lead? Should the federal government lead? It's good to see the states come together on good policy and push it forward to the federal government. And that's what we did here in Florida. We influenced state by state across the country and made a difference.
And then another issue that, I think last decade there was a lot of frustration among Second Amendment advocates for some of the legislation that had come out of the Florida legislature signed by the previous governor. When I came in, there were still some impulses to try to even do gun control. I said no. We need to stop. The restricting Second Amendment rights is a mistake, and I opposed that when it was happening. I wasn't governor yet, so I couldn't stop it. But we need to expand Second Amendment rights, and we did a lot of things leading up to the constitutional carry debate, and so that was something that you did as well.
You know, it sure is. And it's kind of funny. I had just gotten elected, wasn't really sure where to park, how to mechanically file a bill. And they're like, we'd like you, are you willing to carry this 2A bill? I was like, abso-freaking-lutely. You know, I have fought for the things I love in our nation, and don't tempt me with a good time, right? Ultimately, we have to claw those back. Our bill was the first of its kind in years across our nation, where a state had already given away rescinded freedoms, 2A rights, clawed them back. It was a huge milestone. And ultimately, you know, we got permitless carry, the constitutional carry model that we have, and there's still more out there. And look, we have to push. We have to continue that fight. Our Second Amendment rights are very clearly stated in our Constitution, and it's something that I was blessed to get to carry, grateful that we got it passed, and thankful that you got it signed because, again, it's the right thing to do.
And I know there's other things. There was not a lot of appetite. I know the House Speaker wouldn't even allow them to file the open carry bill, and there's things that we have massive Republican majorities. 25, 26, 28 other states already have some of this stuff. So this isn't like this is some type of, radical intervention. Florida got behind the times. Now, we've done a lot to catch up, but we have commanding majorities, particularly in the House, and they could be doing a lot more. Law enforcement and crime, there's movements around the country, and even has been some in Florida, to be weaker on crime, let people out of prison, relax penalties and standards. How have you navigated the law and order and crime issue?
First off, I'm going to take one step back into the 2A issue. They want to demonize guns. Guns are inanimate objects, just like a desk, just like carpet. Ultimately, you teach people how to use it. I am in for securing all of our 2A rights back and giving them to our citizens. So it's a good segue here. Ultimately, you got to hold people accountable. There has been this movement across the nation that we should be soft on crime. People can't help it. Give them a second, third, a fourth, a fifth chance. We don't really mean what we say. What happens? Look at the lawlessness in California, in New York, New Jersey, in Pennsylvania. Look at Chicago. Look at all of these eastern and western states. They're lawless safe havens. It's ridiculous. In California, $999, you could go rob things and not going to prosecute you. They're not going to push this. What kind of nonsense is that? It's utterly ridiculous. The average citizen, when you talk to them, they're livid about this. It doesn't make sense. So I am very clear. I'm going to stand and back our men and women in blue. I'm going to stand with our sheriffs, our men and women in green, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure they have the time, tools, training. I say that all the time. Those 3 T's are important. But give them those tools and training to get back to their family successfully after they complete their mission. But you got to give them that second piece as well, that if they're going to go out there and lay everything they have on the line, if they're going to risk it for the biscuit, to quote a former Bucks coach, you got to make it worthwhile. You got to hold people accountable, and criminals should be held accountable. No early release. You're going to do the crime. If you're going to do the crime, you're going to do the time. That's exactly where Florida is, and I've run many bills pushing that right forward. I think we've passed over 50, and a good 10 or 11 of those have been holding people accountable for crimes they do.
So we, as part of Florida's emergency operations, we've done a number of things over the years. When the Hamas-Israel conflict broke out, we rescued people there. When there was instability in Haiti, we rescued a lot of people. A lot of Christian missionaries are over there, brought them back. And then this year we had the Iran, a 12-day war with Israel, and the airport was shut down. People were scurrying. There were a lot of students and young people, families in Florida that had like a 20-year-old college student over there. And so obviously Florida sprung into action. And so I authorize rescues and boats and flights and all these other things. And I was calling the shots from this desk. At that time, you immediately go over to Israel yourself personally, and you're on the ground rescuing people and bringing them to safety. So talk a little bit about what you did to help people over there.
Well, I want to talk a minute about you. It takes big ones to sit there and do something that nobody else is willing to do. You would not believe the amount of U.S. citizens, Floridians, people from all across the planet that were just gobsmacked that it was the state of Florida who stood up and led. That kind of leadership matters. People put faith and trust in people that they know will do the right thing no matter the odds. and it was you, the state of Florida, that stood up and led. So the very least I can do is do what I've always done. I got to be honest, it was like an old pair of boots. It just felt right to get over there. I've been shot at by a lot of things, but that was my first time, being shot at by a ballistic missile. It catches your attention. I can see why people were really freaked out. The Iranian ballistics, they're real. Watching them come across the sky, but flying in there, we went from Florida to Cyprus to Jordan. At Jordan, we got out, checked out the airport, went to the Sheikh Hussein border crossing, and went and made some friends with Jordanian intel, and then on the other side, the Israeli intel, and did what we do. And then we went in there and we started rounding up American citizens, not just Floridians, Americans. And I'm going to take a moment to talk about the president, and this is something that I think you talk about a lot, and it has to have a light shined on it. He wants states to lead in disaster. When your people are in harm's way and they're at risk, that's a disaster. And you stood up and led. Again, you set the standard for the nation because the president said, yeah, this is what we should do. You took every inch given to you, and Florida led, and our citizens won because we brought them home.
Well, I think people are very appreciative of your work. I know I've talked to a lot of people who are very thankful, son and daughter, family members. Yep. And, it's not very many lieutenant governors are expeditionary in our stuff, but that's part of the reason why. So I have dubbed Jay Collins the Chuck Norris of Florida politics. Green Beret, loses a limb, continues to serve, shows up after hurricane, shows up in Israel in the middle of a war zone, all these other things, obviously conservative record and everything. So it begs the question, are you a Chuck Norris fan, and do you have a favorite Chuck Norris movie?
Great question. Who isn't? From our generation, who's not a Chuck Norris fan? You can't go wrong. Yes, I have a favorite Chuck Norris movie. We're going to keep that title to ourselves, but it does involve motorcycles with rockets and people in black suits doing God's work in crazy places.
Well, I thought about some of the depictions of military, special forces and even beyond. I mean, you have like Black Hawk Down, the movie. Yeah. Obviously you had a lot of stuff about World War II. That became very popular for a while. But some of the more modern stuff, one of the things that I joked is, since you're a Green Beret, I'm going to have everyone watch The Unit and the Executive Office of the Governor. And the reason why I know about The Unit and I watch it is because the lead character, the actor, Dennis Haysbert, he was Pedro Serrano on Major League, which was an epic character. Yep. And then he was David Palmer on 24. I guess he was the candidate at first, then he became the president, and probably the best TV president that I could think of. And so I was like, yeah, he's great, good, and they did it. So I watched that, and Casey and I used to watch it, and we've watched some other stuff. But as a whole, when they're doing military stuff, kind of in modern media, whether it's a TV series or a movie, as a guy that's kind of been there, how accurate do you find some of this stuff?
So it varies by movie. Black Hawk Down was actually really pretty good. It was a lot of the folks who kind of raised me up in our regiment in the special operations and special forces community, and even some of the tiered communities and the special missions units. It was a big deal to them. They said it brought back memories because of how they told the story. And it hit on the reality of combat. Now, not everyone's that way, right? Some of these are a little bit out there. But in the end, I want to take a little bit different approach, and I want to say, people like us, people who come from the military, we struggle with this quiet versus silent mentality. We have been silent on what we did, and I was adopted and raised by a World War II veteran. He didn't tell me anything, until it was too late about what he did and why he fought and the stories and the things that he did. I knew he did them, but I had to learn them in a new, different way. We can't let that happen. If we don't impart our knowledge and tell the facts about what went down, why would men and women be willing to go into a nation that wasn't theirs, fight beside people they don't know, and risk all that they are or all they can be for something bigger than themselves? What would drive you to do that? What is it that's so important? We have to tell that. And to me, it's those soft things, man. That's the same fight we have today. The reason I got into politics is to protect and preserve the things I love. That's my family, my community, our state, what makes us who we are. That's what I was doing in Afghanistan and Iraq and all over the world. We got to make sure that those are the stories we tell. That every time that somebody gets hit, you know, when I got shot in my arm, my wife was active duty. She was on classified systems. So she was going to find out that I'd been shot before the military system got to her. So I'm just fresh from bleeding, had the tourniquet off, had done a little bit of triage work, and I called her and said, hey, look, I've been shot, I had to do surgery on myself, and I'm okay. I even sent her a picture of the post-surgery wound. It seemed like a good idea at the time. She was not impressed. I was trying to show her, look, I'm okay, my arm is fine. That was not how it was received. But there's a real cost. Imagine being a wife at home, a husband at home, and you get a call like that, or you get a worse call. Man, that cost is real. That's why we fight. That's why we have to preserve this nation, this experiment, this republic that has been so dynamic and preserved by generation over generation. But that's why people like yourself, like me, people who understand what's at stake have to step up and fight. It's worth preserving and fighting for.
Yeah, I'm thinking like some of the stuff that's been in popular culture. I mean, I know when Top Gun came out, you know, that caused a surge of people that wanted to be naval aviators.
This guy.
Yeah. and the same thing, you know, I don't know if it was to a certain extent, but I have asked some people more recently about Top Gun Maverick. I was like, have you noticed an increased interest? And they said yes. The Bin Laden, when the SEAL Team 6 took out Bin Laden, that created an interest in becoming a Navy SEAL. I mean, so it's like, so these things, when people see this, I mean, they do get inspired by it. I like Top Gun Maverick because it was like, that came out in like peak woke era, and it was like not woke at all, and it was just like patriotic and normal, and you know, our kids really liked it. I mean, honestly, it wasn't like, there may have been some bad words here there, but overall it was not like something that I was like I had to like really worry. They saw a lot of action, and they liked it. And I probably saw that multiple times in the theaters, and I don't know, I can't remember any other movie I've seen in the theaters recently. So I thought it was really well done. So you're Tampa, and you represented Tampa. Obviously, you guys live in Tampa. So we've been having this debate because you know we were in town after your thing, stopped at one of the delis, and you know, Tampa is the original place that had people come from Cuba. Miami became really populated after Castro took over and people fled communism. And so you have kind of, you know, different competing cultures in a certain respect. And one of the ways they compete is Tampa has Cuban sandwiches, and a lot of them will put salami on the Cuban sandwich. You go down to a place like Versailles in Miami, they ain't putting salami on the Cuban sandwich. And so you're a Tampa guy. Does salami belong on a Cuban sandwich?
Well, let's even take.
And I'm asking this question today because as we're recording this, today is officially 813 Day.
It is
for Tampa and Hillsborough County, and so I think it's appropriate. We actually put something out on social media. I think the sentiment was pretty strongly against salami on the Cuban sandwich, but I think that may be a tougher issue for you as a Tampa guy.
You know, it is, but I'm going to stick to my guns on this. You know, the Cuban sandwich started in Tampa. It did. So obviously we know salami belongs on the sandwich. I'm a salami guy. It's got to be on there. It just finishes it off. It just adds that extra little bit of flavor, and I'm a huge fan. And
you know, the Tampa, Ybor City, and then some of the stuff in South Tampa. There's some great spots for sure. Obviously, Miami has a lot of great spots as well. I'm trying to think, as a kid that grew up in the Tampa Bay area, you know, one of the things I think that they did really well was was some of the seafood stuff. You go to a place like Frenchie's, get this like massive grouper sandwich. I mean, so you know, there was some really good stuff. I think Tampa Bay area is a really unique place to grow up, and it's a great place to live. Are you a Tampa sports fan?
I am a huge Tampa sports fan. Absolutely. You know, the Rays, love having them there where they are at Steinbrenner right now. Excited to see the Rays. Looks like they're going to stay in the Bay Area on the right side of the water on this one. And watching a game in Steinbrenner Field is a little bit like minor league baseball with major league players. It's just a great dynamic. It's awesome. Love seeing them there. Obviously,
Was it full when you were there?
it was jammed. Yeah, it was jam packed. The Rays were playing really great. It was awesome. But it was just the vibe in the stands. People were having fun, and it was really hot outside even then. And it was great baseball. And then of course you got the Bucks. I mean, come on. I love the way Baker Mayfield plays. I wasn't sold at first. I got to be honest. I was a little worried coming after the GOAT, after Brady. And any dude who will stick his head down and run through a tackle as a quarterback and is just gritty, diving into the dirt, we can be friends. That's good.
Yeah, I think that they've done better than, I thought when Tom left, I thought there was going to be a crash. And, they've managed to be playoff caliber.
Yeah.
Still got to figure out a way to get it to the next level for there. Were you at the Tampa Super Bowl when Tom won?
No, I didn't make the game there.
So that was the COVID Super Bowl, and Florida, like we're open for business, right? And I told the NFL, fill the stadium, but they were like, well, no. So literally, they would put cardboard cutouts of people throughout the stadium so that the stadium wasn't full, and it was like half. And so first of all, it was an awkward thing to be at a Super Bowl with that. But then I'm like, you're trying to say, like, because of COVID, you don't want to fill the stadium. You guys know when the Bucks win, there's going to be 150,000 people partying in Ybor City after this.
Right.
What difference does it make? And so it was fun to be there as a Bucks fan to see that. But it also just wasn't quite what I think a Super Bowl would be, or heck, it isn't even what a normal regular season game would be like, where you would normally fill it out. And I do think that the Rays have had a good baseball product. They've been able to produce good players. They've had a difficult time really making it work financially and drawing the type of people. But I think part of what you need to do is, when you have a stadium, is like what they did in Atlanta. They have the Battery there, so you've got shops and restaurants and stuff, so that it becomes kind of a place to be, even for people who may not be big baseball fans. And you end up generating more interest in the team. People know if you go to that, and obviously when the team is sold, they're going to have to figure out how are they going to do that. I know there's a lot of interest in putting a stadium in Tampa. I don't know what Pinellas County's appetite is at this point. I know it really broke down with that. And I also know there's like Orlando probably, wants to get on this. And so it'll be interesting to see. But having, a stadium with having the rest of the stuff there, I think is financially viable, and I think it contributes to the team's possible success, into the future. So we'll keep fingers crossed on that and hope for the best. And then, it's like interesting. Since I've been governor, like when Trudeau was Prime Minister of Canada, no Canadian team won a Stanley Cup, not one. We've had 4 Stanley Cups since I've been governor, 2 for the Panthers and 2 for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I will tell you this, growing up in the Tampa Bay area, there weren't that many hockey fans. Obviously no one played it at that time in Florida. They got a team, and they created something where people really wanted to be a part of it. And they ended up drawing a lot of fans who may not have ever been involved in hockey. And then they became really strong Lightning fans, and it became very successful.
They sure did. Tampa Bay, the Bay Area, loves the Lightning. It's absolutely incredible to go to a game. It really is. And I figured we'd separate that out a little bit, because you gotta point out, right? Canada is the hockey nation in the planet, right? We've got 4, right, since you've been governor. 4 right here in the state of Florida. It's incredible. And to have been in Tampa Bay for a couple of those, man, it was just amazing. You can't beat the energy of a hockey game. You just can't. Plus, it's air conditioned. It's kind of nice. It's cool coming off the ice. It's great to see.
I think if you think about sports, I think of all the sports that it's really good to be in person. I think hockey is pretty much near the top. I think football is better to watch on TV. It just is. I think golf is better to watch on TV. We have great golf tournaments in Florida, the Players Championship, and I've gone to some of these over the years, and it's fun. But if you actually want to just see all the shots, you watch on TV
you can't
and see
see
it. I'm good either baseball. I'm a baseball guy, so I'm good with that either way. And basketball is cool to see in person if you're there. We were there. We went to the national championship game for the Gators against Houston and San Antonio. And that was exciting. First of all, the Gators were playing poorly most of the game. It didn't seem like they had a shot. and then they just kind of came roaring back, and we're down to like 2 minutes, and all of a sudden, they win, and that was a really, really powerful feeling. We've won the NCAA basketball championships up at Governor. The Bucks obviously won the Super Bowl, had Stanley Cups. No college football championships. When I was growing up here, Miami every year, Florida State, Florida. I mean, just absolutely high octane programs. It's been a little difficult. I know Miami had a chance to make the playoff last year. Florida State 2 years ago. Florida, I think, is going to be pretty good this year. We'll see what happens with Florida State. They start with Alabama, which I think is going to be difficult. Miami's got Georgia's quarterback that they brought in. It's hard to even keep track of who's who because of the transfer portal and the NIL. But that's one thing, year after year, you knew that Florida team was going to be in. And if they had a playoff back in the 80s and 90s, you would have had Miami or Florida State or Florida winning almost every year, because even when they didn't win the championship, they usually were the best team by the end of the year. I mean, that was pretty much apparent. So we'll see what happens. I know we got the college football season coming in a couple weeks. Now, you being from Tampa, I take it that you are supportive of the USF Bulls.
I am. You got to support your hometown team. I love USF. The stadium that's going to be built there is going to be incredible. You talk about the transfer portal. You talk about NIL. It's going to make this a lot more desirable for athletes as they come in to have it right there on campus. It's going to be incredible. Yeah, we're a Go Bulls family. It's what we do. So, Rhea, I told you I do this. Put it out there. We love our team. We love our Bulls. But, growing up, we also pulled for FSU a little bit. I got to be honest. We did. That was the heyday, man. Florida as a state was just a juggernaut for football. It was on television all the time. You saw it. And it was just this mentality of smash mouth. We're going to do it this way. Knock your socks off. And I'm a defensive guy. Go figure. I played linebacker in football, and just loved what they did on the defensive side. The drive, the dedication. It was amazing.
Yeah, my kids, because this is what they've known growing up in Tallahassee. When I became governor, my two oldest were very young, and our third wasn't even born yet. And so they've all, over the years, going to games, have really gravitated. 2 years ago, they were loving Florida State undefeated in the regular season. Last year was a little bit more difficult. There was some turbulence with the 2-win season or whatever. So, but they're not shaken. I mean, that's just what they are, and it's not. We haven't put them in that direction. In fact, we've taken them to Miami stuff. We've taken them to Florida stuff, and they don't want anything to do. They are definitely Noles. When I was running for governor in 2018, we did a rally in the Panhandle, and we had President Trump during his first term, and Bobby Bowden were the two main surrogates. And I had known, obviously, I had known the president for a while at that point. But Bobby, I don't think I had ever even met him before. He's like, I want to help you. And so I got to know him, and he had been, obviously long retired at that point, but was a legend. I mean, going back to the 80s, and just a great guy. And I think, so when the legislature did the Florida Medal of Freedom, and so I started giving it out. And so the first one I gave was to Coach Bowden. And this was probably a year or two before he died. And he had a lot of the former players. We did it at the governor's mansion. And look, they won championships. They produced a lot of NFL talent, all this other stuff. But I think if you look at the players that played under Bowden, they typically made positive impacts in their communities.
Sure did.
I mean, you got guys like Derek Brooks, Warrick Dunn. I mean, these guys were not just great football players. And I think a lot of that was Coach Bowden and how he cultivated. But you basically show up in Tallahassee as a kid. You're 18 years old, and you're kind of on your own now. And he really, I think, instilled a lot of positive values. And so his players, have touched the lives of a lot of people through the years, and I think a lot of it goes back to what Bobby did.
It is. He invested and created young men who can make a difference. I mean, look at Senator Corey Simon, right? Another alum, and a guy who swears by how Bobby helped him turn into the man he is. You talk to anybody, just off the cuff, they all swear by who he was, how he drove them, and he helped them become who they were.
Corey Simon, we had him doing Volunteer Florida, great guy, and we are like, you should run for Senate. So we helped him. It was a tough race. He won.
Sure was.
And like, this guy gets in there and he just starts doing like everything. And so I'm looking through the budget this year and all these line items, Simon. I'm like, how do you get so much stuff in the budget? And I was like, unbelievable how productive he's been. And, maybe we can chalk that up to Coach Bowden's, tutelage back in the day. But, do you have any parting shots? I mean, I know you just got appointed to the position as Lieutenant Governor. I think a lot of people probably didn't know anything about you. And I think the people that saw that are generally excited. I think that they're very much impressed by your service to the country in uniform, but also to our state, leading on really important conservative policies. And I think they look forward to, to more successes ahead.
Well, I think I'll leave you with this. This is Florida. We have an expectation of excellence. We should aim for excellence in all that we do. That means we're not going to take a step back. We're not going to go back to where Florida was 10, 15, 20 years ago. We are the conservative proving grounds of America. Under your leadership, this state has fought and been on the right side of multiple issues. We have led our nation forward. We've got rid of woke. We have said when others wouldn't stand up, COVID and how it was handled across the nation was destroying families. And Florida stood alone. We've driven education and school choice. We're going to continue to fight for two-way rights. We've pushed back on the CCP when nobody else wanted to do it. That's what we should do in Florida. That is the expectation. That is the excellence that we should eat, sleep, and breathe. We should fight for in everything that we do. I am laser focused, and if there's a defining characteristic, if you talk to my kids and my wife and people who know me, it is that I'm relentless. I will not stop. We are going to push, and we are going to make sure that Florida maintains this momentum alongside everything that you're doing. I want you to know that I've got your back. We're not going to bow down. We will not kowtow to what's easy. We're going to take that hard right and continue to fight, and I will do all I can to make sure that happens.
And I would also just note, and maybe this is just a coincidence, but we appointed Jay Collins as governor. I talked about his background. I dubbed him the Chuck Norris of Florida politics. And we had a storm brewing in the Atlantic, Hurricane Aaron, and I appointed him. And then what? The next day, it's now taken a strong turn north. And so maybe that's just a coincidence, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Governor.
Okay, God bless.